Hi there, I'm Dr. Kimberly Olson, licensed clinical psychologist, here to talk with you today about paranoid narcissism. So, we've been talking a lot about narcissism. You see it all over the place online. But what if the person you're living with has an added component of paranoia? Makes treatment much more difficult and it is a lot scarier to live with. So let's just take a peek at what we're looking at. Okay, so think in terms of putting together the traits of narcissistic personality disorder and paranoid personality disorder and lumping them into a bowl of shit soup. And I only say shit soup, not because people are shit, but because it makes it, again, tremendously difficult to treat. Joe Navarro came up with an 80-statement checklist regarding paranoid narcissism. Now, he was a profiler for the FBI, and certainly has a lot of credibility and experience in this area. You can find this online on Psychology Today. It was originally published on May 1st, 2018. So if you suspect that you have somebody in your life that falls into this category, please go ahead and look up Joe's information. Okay, so here's what we see, just a few strong points. Entitled to special treatment without commensurate experience, education, etc. So this is the person that, let's say you have a family full of lawyers, okay? They will come over to dinner and tell all these educated people why they're wrong and discount the things that they have to say. And in fact, may even call them narcissistic, not understanding that they do have commiserate education and experiences that make them experts in their field. Well, that's not the case usually with a narcissist. They want that same treatment without having had to work for it, without having had to go to medical school. They want to be treated with that same credibility, not understanding that those things are earned. They tend to be very grandiose. They definitely think they're the smartest guy or gal in the room. They tend to be envious, arrogant. They violate boundaries, interpersonally exploitative, devaluing, and lacking in insight. So let's take these apart step by step. Envious. So they tend to be very envious of others and therefore assume that everybody's envious of them, even though that's usually not the case, because the other person has probably done things with their life that they're focused on and not so much focused on what this person has done or not done, or what credibility they have in their own mind. Violation of boundaries. So you're trying to end an argument, and this person will maybe get in your face and say, I just don't like it that you walk away from arguments, when you're over there saying, but wait a minute, these arguments never end well. I'm never heard. That's why I set this boundary with you. But there is no such thing as boundaries. It's a progressive violation of boundaries in relationships. Interpersonally exploitative. So they are always looking for narcissistic supply. Okay. And so they tend to sort of be drawn to people who are codependent, who have low self-esteem, who are much more likely to find them credible, right, based on their own insecurity, and much more likely to tolerate narcissistic behavior. And when I say exploitative, demeaning of the other person, they are often drawn initially to somebody that they love bomb and highly value, and then proceed to take them apart brick by brick. They have little to no insight. So if you're to present this list to them, they're going to deny that that could possibly be them, and tell you all of the reasons that all of the experts are wrong and they in fact are right. Questions the intentions of those who disagree. So it's not okay to disagree with these folks. There's only one person who's going to be right, and that's going to be me. And if you disagree with them, they become very preoccupied, very angry. because it's not the idea you're rejecting, it's them you're rejecting. And again, without the humility to say, you know what, I've never studied these things. I don't know what other people who have expertise and experience know, so maybe I'm wrong. To even question that requires a degree of humility that is difficult for the narcissist to have. Excuse me. Here's where the paranoia part comes in. So preoccupied with unwarranted suspicions. Okay. And that's not to suggest, by the way, that the government doesn't lie to us, that people aren't out to get us sometimes, that the end of the world might not be coming, because all of those things could in fact be true. But with the narcissist, instead of pausing and becoming highly self-reflective, like, am I treating people in a way that would please God? They're looking at what everybody else in the world is doing and demeaning and discrediting them. They don't get that true spirituality comes from looking within about who we are and how our relationship is with God, and not taking the assessment of everybody else in the room. And if you disagree with these conspiracies, you're stupid. Okay. You don't know as much as me. And the truth is, whatever he or she decides it is. Okay, that is truth. Doesn't matter. We could have Carl Sagan from Cosmos here. When the paranoid narcissist has decided that something is true, it is. And they will ignore contrary evidence. And again, no insight. Okay. What's difficult is, take that paranoia, right? Where I'm sure that, and I'm just going to say something out there. Let's say that you're sure that they're poisoning pretzels. Okay. And the narcissist has told you that they are poisoning pretzels, and you try to present them with information that that's not the case, that the issues with pretzels probably came from somewhere else. Well, you're challenging their paranoia triggers the narcissism. So now you're not just challenging my beliefs, but you're challenging me as a person. And you begin to see some of that narcissistic rage. Victim postures, or doesn't recognize how their behaviors trigger others. They don't get how offensive it is when they come to dinner with a table full of lawyers for them to start telling them what they should be doing. Okay, they don't get it. They don't get that they are not entitled to have that same conversation, not because people are not equal, because of course that they are, and everybody's entitled to their opinion. But I don't sit and argue with a mechanic about cars, because I have no credibility. I've never studied cars. I mean, other than the University of YouTube, which, guys, take that for what it's worth too, because there's a lot of people presenting information who don't have any expertise either. And that's not to suggest it's not important or credible. It's just to suggest it's a different discussion. Okay. So I don't argue with mechanics because I don't know anything about cars. And if I learned a little something, I might share that with the mechanic, but I am not going to assume that he doesn't already know that and that he doesn't know better than me. Victim postures. Everybody's out to get me. Everyone is against me because they don't recognize how offensive they are. When someone tells you, stop talking about that, okay, because you're pissing me off, they don't get that. They're going to continue to talk because it's that important for them to win. And then they wonder again why nobody likes them. Right? Because being around you is really, really difficult. They think that they are the hero. They never see themselves as triggering other people's responses and reactions to them by the way they treat others. And your spidey senses are going to tell you pretty early on that you're dealing with this person because you feel troubled. Something isn't right. Something is inconsistent. And I would invite you to really trust your spidey senses. Okay, the facts. Due to the nature of the disorders, they are treatment resistant. So just like the narcissist, they're going to fire the therapist as soon as the therapist begins to challenge them. Because remember, they have no credibility. I have credibility. And so they're going to fire them. Now, you take that again and couple that with paranoia, then not only is the therapist stupid and not credible, but they're out to get me. Okay, they're out to convince my wife that I'm not a good man, or whatever the latest conspiracy theory is, not that I'm culpable for my own behavior. The gaslighting is insidious. Gaslighting is when you begin to second guess yourself. You're being made to feel like you're crazy, like what you're seeing isn't really what's going on there. I have another video on gaslighting, so please take some time to look at that because it is insidious. Okay, little by little, brick by brick, you begin to question yourself and everything you know about yourself. And folks, this gets worse, never better. Their paranoia increases with age. Okay, so we find that psychosis, delusional thought, things like that, they tend to get worse with age. So you will find your movements more restricted and yourself more isolated, and you become part of their cocoon. We used to have a diagnosis, this was in DSM-4, it's called a shared psychotic episode, meaning that you start hanging around with somebody who is really paranoid, you're going to find that your paranoia goes up into the ceiling too. And that you start getting used to having, I don't know, the tinfoil on the window because the guy next door might be able to see into your house like he cares. So you find yourself becoming more paranoid. Narcissistic rage is really tough again with these folk. When you challenge them, when you disagree, when you stand your ground, and let's say you don't back off as usual. Let's say you have a moment where you say, damn it, I do not believe that the pretzels are poisoned. I think that you're barking up the wrong tree with this. That rage will be triggered inside of them, and it's not uncommon for things to eventually get physical. Although most of the spouses learn really early on that you just don't challenge them. You keep your thoughts to yourself. I need you to know that it's not going to get better. Barring a miracle from God, it's not going to get better because these people fire those who can help them. That's what they do. It's the nature of the disorder. And so if you're going to stay, recognize that things aren't going to get better. I know I will hear a lot of people, women in particular, will say, but what if he gets some counseling? He had a really rough childhood. Yeah, you know what? If he'd stay in counseling long enough to learn something about himself or herself, then you might be right. But chances are he's not going to stay in counseling, maybe just long enough to get you to stay. Let's say you've really had it with his or her crap. So maybe just long enough to get you to stay. So it's more of an act of manipulation. Okay. They don't change. You say that again. They're not going to change, barring an act of God. And your self-esteem is eliminated slowly, so you won't leave. Okay, they like dependency. Okay, you've been so beaten down. Maybe you're not doing anything with your life, not pursuing your talents and things like that, because a long time ago, you were convinced that you didn't have any talents and there was nothing about you that was worthwhile. And that's bullshit. Okay, that's how you're manipulated. So if you're going to stay, if you're saying, you know what, Olson, I get all this, but I'm going to stay anyway. And for everybody, by the way, there's cost benefit analysis in everything in our lives. So here's what I would recommend. Avoid anything that will trigger their paranoid jealousy. Okay, just don't do it. Okay, because you're going to lose, right? You're not going to convince them. They're not going to have an aha moment. They're not going to go, fucking A, it's surprising how paranoid I've been all these years. Thank you for enlightening me. That's not going to happen. Do not engage with them when they are paranoid, because you're going to lose. Calm down and distract. Get the hell away. You do the smile and nod thing that you've done to survive in this environment. My intent, while I would love to see you liberated, is not to watch you get hurt. Okay. Maintain healthy boundaries to the extent that you can. It's a slippery slope. So narcissists will continue to manipulate to get you to do what they want you to do, to believe what you want them to believe. And my friends, it's a slippery slope. Before you know it, you're like, oh my God, who lives here? Who's doing this stuff? So find those things. And my prayer is that you have a deal breaker somewhere in there, right? That you're not going to accept crossing of that line. Have a safety or escape plan, especially if you are preparing to leave. Okay. I don't care where you hide your keys, you get an extra key, where you stash some cash, anything you need to do. So when that rage comes out, especially if they see that you're getting healthy and planning to leave, okay, you can get the hell out of there, right? Seek help for yourself and really explore what makes you stay here, okay? Because it's a self-esteem issue. It's a codependency issue. And since apples don't fall far from trees, chances are you had a narcissistic parent. And so this was all too familiar to you. Build a support team and engage in outside interests as much as possible. So it is your support team that's going to be there for you. Remember, part of narcissistic relationships is really isolating the person so they don't have those support networks. And outside interests, of course, help you to have a little bit of a reality check, because it's so easy when you live with a paranoid narcissist for their reality to become your reality. Okay, so that's my little spiel on paranoid narcissism. So I'm going to ask you a favor, which is I did this topic at a request of somebody. So if you have a topic that you would like me to address, by all means, write it in the comment section. I would be more than happy to do that. And I thank you so much for spending your time with me. Thanks.